if it isn't little Jimmy Watson. My, how you've grown. What can I do for you today?
Doctor! I don't know what's wrong with me. My head and my body are all mixed up, and lately I just don't feel right fitting into the confines of what society determines gender to be.
Oh, Jimmy, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just non-binary.
What's that? One of those new Pokemon from Nintendo and Game Freak's Pokemon Black and White 2 for the Nintendo 3DS originally released in 2012? Oh, I know it ain't. I'm just stressed and trying to understand a new and difficult situation.
You sure are. Because of the magic of science and technology, more and more kids and adults are hearing about diverse and unrepresented life experiences and finding the words that describe their own experience as well.
Listen, Doc, I ain't done no fancy book learning like you. Maybe I can't heal people just by looking at them.
That's not what I do.
Maybe I can't raise the dead and have them fight alongside me or turn their souls into power-ups for my weapons.
I think that's Skyrim.
I ain't even got a proper microphone.
How are you doing that?
But I do know myself, and even I ain't sure. How do you know I'm non-binary?
Oh, Jimmy, can't you see? I know, because I'm you.
Okay, so to begin, this question, how do I know if I'm non-binary, is very personal. Everyone you meet will have a different answer. I can only share with you my answer, and to do that, I think it's best to start by telling a couple stories about my life. This is me at 14. One of my close friends, a girl in the grade above me, asked if she could put my hair into pigtails, and I said yes. When I was 8 years old, I was at a friend's house, a girl, for her birthday. I was the only boy there, and at a certain point, my mom had to come and pick me up early because they were gonna have a slumber party. And I just remember thinking, why do I have to leave? Why am I the only one who has to leave? When my facial hair started coming in, I began to hate the way that I looked. It comes in really thick. I have really thick follicles, and even with a really close shave, you can still see it. You can still see it dotting my face. And it, as you may notice, it still bothers me. At the time, I thought I was a freak for hating the way that I looked, and I can recognize that now as dysphoria, but I felt like a freak because all of my male peers were ecstatic. They were thrilled that they could grow a beard, and for me, it was just a completely different feeling. That feeling of being a freak didn't begin or end there either. Looking back now, it's obvious to me that I never really fit into the gender binary, nor was I ever even particularly aligned to the masculine end of that spectrum. For example, some of my friends in high school, guys and girls both, would joke around that I had a girl butt. It was a totally friendly joke, not derisive at all, but I took it as a compliment in a way that I knew I wasn't supposed to, you know? Like I'm a guy and I'm supposed to be offended at being compared to a girl in some way or whatever. I also took many opportunities to dress in women's clothes or wear makeup, like putting on a dress for Rocky Horror, or one year I went as Fairuza Balk's character from The Craft for Halloween. I think that kind of gender transgressive costuming is one of the more common stories of the duh, hello, you're trans variety that a lot of people have from across the trans continuum. But there are also all of these smaller, less easily defined bits and pieces that add up and speak to sort of the same kind of thing. I was always hyper affectionate with my friends, even my guy friends, in a way that was not common where I grew up. And from a young age, I've consistently had strong platonic relationships with women in a way that a lot of the men I know did not, do not, or still don't have. 10 years after the pigtails photo, I was 24 and living in New York with my partner, Marianne. It was our first year living together. It was our first year out of college. And I was coming to terms with myself in a way that I really hadn't had to do before. I turned towards Tumblr for information because I found that on it, people were having these really interesting educational conversations about gender, sexuality, identity. At this point in my life, I knew virtually nothing about trans people. So thankfully, while I was looking for answers to questions about my sexuality, I was also exposed to the experiences of gender nonconforming people. I kept having these, oh shit, I feel that way too moments reading their stories, until after a while, it all just fell together and I realized that I am gender fluid. And from there I came to the label non-binary, which is primarily how I identify now. So the answer to the question, how do I know I'm non-binary, is thinking of myself as non-binary is the first time that all of my life experiences make sense to me. It's the first time that I feel like I fit into the world at large. You know, I spent so much of my life thinking that I don't belong. But the reality is I just don't belong in that binary concept of gender. I want to make it clear that you don't have to collect evidence or build a case to prove to anyone that you are trans, gender nonconforming, non-binary, however you identify. Even for me, I identified as non-binary before I realized that any of the stuff I just talked about had anything to do with it. It only made sense after the fact, and that's okay. Too many of the messages we see in the world tell us that we don't belong, that we have to conform to someone else's standard or be alone forever. But nothing could be further from the truth. You do belong. You're not alone, and even when you feel alone, you're not. There's so many people out there who can and do love you exactly as you are. The last thing I want to say is that, again, my answer to the question, how do I know if I'm non-binary, is not universal. If your experience differs, that's totally fine. People get to the same place different ways. If you think a certain label might be right for you, try it out. Gender and identity aren't permanent aspects of your existence. They're fluid and changing like everything else in life. No one knows you better than you, so just go with what feels right and be open to that changing somewhere down the line. It would be easier if we could figure out our identity and be 100% sure that that's what it is and that's what it's going to stay forever, but that's not how life works. Life is all about change. You know, the journey, not the destination. To quote the Queen herself, "The only thing that makes life worth living is permanent, intolerable uncertainty." Non-binary people out there, how do you know that you're non-binary? And what does that mean for you? Until next time, have fun, take care, and read a book, you nerds. Peace.
Shit. Okay.
It is that.
Alright, door sound.
More and more kids and adults are learning about diverse and unrepresented life experiences.
Pokemon from Nintendo and Game Freak's Pokemon Black and White 2 for the Nintendo 3DS released in 2012. Alright, our lines are just like fitting so well together.
Doctor stuff. Well, if it isn't Jimmy Watson, my how you from?
Doctor! I don't know what's going on with me.
Do you want to shoot an adult film after this?
Yeah.